The silent arrival. The Korvax Empire had existed for 12,000 years. Their territories covered 800 star systems. Their technology was so advanced that other species called them gods. They had ended wars with a single word. They had destroyed rebellions with a glance. No one in the known universe had ever challenged their authority and lived to tell the story. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the mining station Frontier 7. She was 38 years old with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her brown eyes showed the kind of exhaustion that came from working 16-hour shifts for 3 months straight. She had been a mining supervisor for the United Earth Mining Corporation for 7 years. Before that, she had been a shuttle pilot. Before that, she had been a kid from New Seattle who dreamed of seeing the stars. Now those stars felt like a prison. The mining operation on Frontier 7 was humanity's most profitable venture in this sector. The asteroid field around the dead planet Talos 3 contained rare elements that Earth needed desperately. Iridium for ship hulls. Platinum for computer systems. Elements that could only be found in places like this, far from home, far from safety. Sarah's crew had been mining here for 93 days. They had 47 days left before the transport ships would arrive to take them home. She looked at her reflection in the thick glass window. She saw a woman who looked older than her years. Space had a way of aging people faster than time on Earth. The constant recycled air, the artificial gravity, the knowledge that you were surrounded by vacuum that would kill you in seconds if something went wrong. It wore on a person. Marcus Webb appeared beside her. He was her second in command, a tall man with pale skin and red hair that never seemed to stay combed. He had been a soldier once, though he never talked about which war or which planet. Sarah had learned not to ask questions about people's pasts. Everyone who worked this far from Earth was running from something. "We have a problem," Marcus said quietly. His voice was calm, but Sarah heard the edge in it. She had worked with him long enough to know when something was seriously wrong. "What kind of problem?" Sarah asked. "The kind that means we need to evacuate immediately." Marcus handed her a data pad. The screen showed readings from their long-range sensors. Sarah felt her stomach drop as she read the numbers. 3 Korvax warships had just entered the system. They were heading straight toward Frontier 7. The Korvax had never come to this sector before. Humanity had chosen this location specifically because it was far from any known alien territories. The United Earth government had treaties with a dozen species, trade agreements with another 20, but the Korvax had never acknowledged humanity's existence. They were too powerful, too ancient, too far above concerns like diplomacy with young species. "Why are they here?" Sarah whispered. Marcus shook his head. He did not know, and that terrified him more than he wanted to admit. The mining station had 317 people on board. Miners, engineers, doctors, scientists, and support staff. They came from every corner of Earth's territories. Some were from Earth itself. Some were from Mars or the Jupiter colonies. Some had been born on ships traveling between the stars and had never set foot on a planet. They were all human, and they were all in danger. Sarah activated the station-wide communication system. Her voice echoed through every corridor and every room. "This is Captain Chen. All personnel report to your emergency stations immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. We have incoming vessels, and we are beginning evacuation procedures now." The station erupted into controlled chaos. People ran to their assigned locations. Emergency crews pulled on pressure suits. Engineers began powering up the escape shuttles. Everyone moved with the precision that came from mandatory safety drills. But there was fear in their eyes. They all knew that 3 escape shuttles could not outrun Korvax warships. In the command center, Sarah pulled up everything they knew about the Korvax. It was not much. The species had existed since before humans had discovered fire. They were tall, nearly 3 meters in height, with bodies that seemed to be made of crystal and light. They communicated through methods that human technology could barely detect. Their ships were works of art, beautiful and terrible, capable of destroying planets with weapons that humanity did not understand. The Korvax had rules. They did not explain these rules to anyone. They simply enforced them. 50 years ago, they had destroyed an entire species called the Draken for reasons they never bothered to share. The galaxy had learned to stay out of their way. The three warships were getting closer. Sarah could see them now on the visual displays. They looked like sculptures made of silver and glass, moving through space with impossible grace. Each one was 10 times larger than Frontier 7. Each one carried weapons that could turn the mining station into dust. "Captain Chen, we are receiving a transmission," one of her communications officers said. Her name was Lieutenant Rebecca Torres, a young woman with dark skin and nervous hands. She had joined the crew 2 months ago, fresh from training on Earth. This was supposed to be her first quiet assignment. "Put it through," Sarah said. The screen flickered, and a face appeared. It was not Korvax. It was human. The man on the screen was old, maybe 70, with white hair and eyes that looked like they had seen too much. He wore a uniform that Sarah did not recognize. Behind him, she could see the interior of a ship that was definitely not human-made. The walls were smooth and glowing with soft blue light. "Captain Chen," the old man said. "My name is Director James Aldrich. I represent the Earth Security Council. You and your crew need to shut down all your equipment and remain exactly where you are. Do not attempt to flee. Do not attempt to communicate with anyone outside this system. If you cooperate, you will not be harmed." Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. "Who the hell are you to give me orders?" she said. "And why are there Korvax warships heading toward my station?" Director Aldrich's expression did not change. He looked tired, like a man who had stopped caring about things like emotion or sympathy. "Because humanity has violated Korvax territory," he said simply. "This mining operation was established in a region that the Korvax claimed 3,000 years ago. They have decided that we have broken their laws. They have decided to respond." "We did not know," Sarah said. "The surveys showed this system was unclaimed. We followed every protocol." "The Korvax do not care what we know or do not know," Aldrich replied. "They do not negotiate. They do not forgive. 3 hours ago, they sent a message to Earth. They gave humanity one choice. Surrender this station and everyone on it, or they will destroy 10 human colonies as punishment. The Earth Security Council has decided to comply with their demands." Sarah stared at the screen. She felt like she was falling. "You are going to hand us over," she said slowly. "You are going to let them take 300 people to save your political relationship." "To save billions," Aldrich corrected. "I am sorry, Captain. But this is the only way. The Korvax will be at your position in 20 minutes. They will board your station. They will take your crew. What happens after that is not something I can control. But if you resist, if you try to run, they will destroy every human settlement in this sector. That is not a threat. That is a promise they have made." The transmission ended. Sarah stood in silence for a long moment. Around her, her crew waited for orders. They had heard everything. They knew what was coming. Marcus stepped close to her. "What are we going to do?" he asked quietly. Sarah looked at him, then at the rest of her crew, then at the screens showing the approaching warships. She thought about her daughter on Mars. She thought about the billions of humans living on hundreds of worlds, all of them unaware that their lives depended on what happened here in the next 20 minutes. She thought about the treaties and the politics and the cold calculations that said 300 lives were acceptable losses. Then she thought about something else. She thought about humanity's history. She thought about every time someone had told humans to surrender, to accept their fate, to die quietly. She thought about how humans had always responded to those demands. "We are going to send a message," Sarah said. Her voice was steady now, filled with something that might have been courage or might have been fury. She could not tell the difference anymore. "Marcus, get me a direct channel to Earth. Not to the Security Council. I want to talk to Admiral Richard Stone at Fleet Command." Marcus looked surprised. Admiral Stone was famous. He was the man who had designed humanity's first true warships. He was also the man who had been court-martialed 5 years ago for refusing to follow orders that he considered cowardly. He had spent the last 5 years in retirement, ignored by the government, beloved by soldiers. "Sarah," Marcus said carefully, "Stone does not have any authority anymore. Even if you reach him, what can he do?" Sarah smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just decided to burn down the world rather than surrender. "He can do what he has always done," she said. "He can fight." The Admiral's choice. Admiral Richard Stone was 71 years old and tired of being useless. He sat on the porch of his house in the Colorado mountains watching the sun rise over peaks that had existed for millions of years. He had built this house with his own hands after the court-martial. He had spent 5 years here, alone except for the occasional visit from old friends who had not abandoned him. His tablet chimed. He looked at it with the expression of a man who expected nothing interesting and was usually proven right. But when he saw who was calling, his expression changed. He accepted the transmission immediately. Captain Sarah Chen appeared on his screen. She looked desperate and determined at the same time. Stone recognized that look. He had seen it in mirrors during his military career. It was the look of someone who had decided that death was better than submission. "Admiral Stone," Sarah said quickly. "I know you do not know me, but I need your help. I am the captain of Mining Station Frontier 7 in the Talos system. The Korvax are about to attack us. The Earth government has ordered us to surrender. They say we violated Korvax territory and that our lives are the price for peace. I have 300 people on this station who did nothing wrong except show up to work. I am not going to let them die or become prisoners of an alien species that considers us insects." Stone listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What do you want from me, Captain? I have no ships. I have no authority. The government made it very clear 5 years ago that they do not want my opinions or my help. I want you to tell me I am not crazy," Sarah said. "I want you to tell me that there is still someone in the human race who believes we should fight back when someone tries to destroy us. And then I want you to help me find the people who feel the same way." Stone stood up from his chair. He walked to the edge of his porch and looked at the mountains. He had lived in peace here for 5 years. He had convinced himself that he was done with war, done with command, done with making decisions that got people killed. But Sarah Chen's words had woken something inside him that he thought had died. "How long do you have?" Stone asked. 20 minutes before the Korvax arrive," Sarah replied. "Maybe less." "That is not enough time to organize a rescue," Stone said. "But it is enough time to send a message. Captain, I need you to do exactly what I tell you. First, broadcast everything that is happening on every channel you have. Make sure every human in this sector knows what the government is doing. Make sure they know that the Korvax think they can take our people without a fight. The government will shut down our transmissions," Sarah said. "They have probably already started jamming our signals." "They will try," Stone agreed. "But mining stations have powerful transmitters. You were built to communicate across star systems. Burn out your equipment if you have to, but get that message out. Second, I need you to hold your position for as long as possible. Do not fight the Korvax directly. You cannot win that battle. But delay them. Make them work for every meter of your station." "And what will that accomplish?" Sarah asked. "We will still be captured or killed." Stone smiled. It was the smile of a man who had just remembered why he had become a soldier in the first place. "It will accomplish something that the Korvax have never experienced before," he said. "It will show them that humanity does not surrender quietly. Now transmit everything, Captain. Make sure the whole galaxy watches what happens next." Sarah nodded. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but there was no time. The transmission ended. Stone immediately activated his own communication system. He had spent 5 years building a network of contacts. Former military officers, ship captains, engineers, and soldiers who had been dismissed or retired or pushed aside by a government that preferred diplomacy to strength. He had kept that network alive because some part of him had always known this day would come. He sent out a single message to 200 people across human space. The message had 3 words: "They need us." Then he started making calls. The first person he contacted was Commander Helen Park. She was 60 years old, a former frigate captain who had been forced into retirement after she had publicly criticized the Earth Security Council. She lived on Mars now, running a transport company. She answered his call immediately. "Richard, what is wrong?" Helen asked. She could hear the urgency in his voice. Stone explained the situation in quick, efficient sentences. When he finished, Helen was silent for 3 seconds. Then she said, "How many ships do you need?" "As many as we can get to Talos in the next 6 hours, Stone replied. Helen laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had been waiting for an excuse to cause trouble. "I can get you 30 transport ships and maybe a dozen armed freighters," she said. "They are not warships, but they have weapons and people who know how to use them. It will take us 5 hours to reach Talos if we push the engines hard enough to cause damage." "Do it," Stone said. "Tell your captains that this is volunteer only. Tell them they might die. Tell them the government will probably arrest them if they survive. But also tell them that this is the moment when humanity decides what kind of species we are going to be." Helen smiled. Her face on the screen showed fierce joy. "I will have my ships ready in 30 minutes, she said. The transmission ended. Stone made 11 more calls in the next 15 minutes. He contacted ship captains and station commanders and fleet officers who had been pushed aside by politicians who wanted peace at any cost. Every single one of them said yes. Every single one of them started gathering ships and weapons and crews who were willing to fight. By the time 20 minutes had passed, Stone had assembled a fleet of 63 vessels. They were not military ships. They were transports and freighters and mining vessels and private yachts. Some of them had weapons. Some of them had been modified with armor plating meant for asteroid impacts. None of them were designed for combat against Korvax warships. But they were coming anyway. On Frontier 7, Sarah Chen watched the Korvax ships arrive. They moved with impossible grace, sliding through space like sharks through water. They positioned themselves around the mining station, surrounding it completely. There was no escape. There had never been any escape. Sarah had broadcast everything just like Admiral Stone had ordered. She had sent the transmission on every frequency the station could produce. She had told the story of what was happening here. She had named the members of the Earth Security Council who had decided that 300 lives were acceptable losses. She had shown the galaxy what humanity looked like when its government chose politics over people. Now she waited. Her crew was armed with mining tools and construction equipment. They had no real weapons, but they had sealed the station's access points. They had flooded the corridors with emergency barriers. They had done everything they could to delay the inevitable. The Korvax ships opened their docking ports. Boarding craft emerged, 20 of them, sleek and silver. They approached the station like arrows seeking a target. Sarah took a deep breath. She picked up a plasma cutter, the closest thing to a weapon she had. Around her, her crew did the same. Marcus stood beside her. "We are going to die here, are we not?" he said quietly. Sarah looked at him. She thought about lying, about giving him false hope. But he deserved better than that. Probably, she said. But we are going to make them remember us. The first Korvax breached the outer hull. Alarms screamed throughout the station. Sarah heard the sound of cutting tools and explosions as the aliens forced their way through the barriers. Her crew fought them at every checkpoint. They used plasma cutters and welding torches and desperation. They held each corridor for minutes before being forced to retreat. The Korvax did not speak. They simply advanced, tall figures glowing with internal light, moving with precision that was almost beautiful. They did not kill unless they had to. They were here to capture, not destroy. That somehow made it worse. Sarah fought until her arms ached. She saw her crew fall around her, stunned by Korvax weapons that felt like lightning. She saw Marcus go down fighting 3 aliens at once. She saw Lieutenant Torres collapse trying to seal a blast door. She fought until there was nowhere left to retreat. Then she stood in the command center, alone, surrounded by Korvax warriors. The leader approached her. It was taller than the others, its crystalline body pulsing with colors that Sarah had no names for. It reached out toward her. And then the alarms changed. The station's sensors detected new arrivals. Dozens of them. 63 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They were not military vessels. They were ships that had been hauling cargo yesterday. But today they had come to fight. Admiral Stone's voice broadcast across every frequency. This is Admiral Richard Stone of the Human Defense Fleet. We are claiming this system under human jurisdiction. Korvax vessels, you have 60 seconds to release the personnel of Frontier 7 and withdraw. If you do not comply, we will consider this an act of war. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. The Korvax leader turned away from her, clearly receiving communication from its ships. For the first time since they had arrived, the aliens seemed uncertain. They had expected easy prey. They had not expected resistance. They had definitely not expected humans to bring a fleet. The Korvax warships powered up their weapons. They were still superior in firepower. They could destroy Stone's fleet with minimal effort. But now it would be a fight, not an execution. Now there would be witnesses. Now the galaxy would see what happened when someone challenged the Korvax. The 60 seconds passed in silence. Then Admiral Stone gave the order that changed everything. All ships, he said calmly. Fire. Human ships charged forward. They launched missiles and kinetic weapons and improvised bombs. They fired mining lasers and construction tools turned into weapons. They threw everything they had at the Korvax warships. It was insane. It was hopeless. It was the most human thing anyone had ever done. And the Korvax, for the first time in 12,000 years, hesitated. They had conquered hundreds of species. They had destroyed civilizations that were older and more advanced than humanity. But they had never faced anyone who fought back with such absolute commitment to defiance. They had never encountered a species that would rather die than submit. The battle had begun, and the galaxy was watching.